I'm very pleased to be with you here today and happy to open and moderate this event. The topic is really very pertinent, and I'm personally invested. As you may know, in order to support the European Green Deal, ambitious to reach carbon neutrality by 2050, in July last year, the Commission presented the EU hydrogen strategy, addressing how hydrogen can support the decarbonization of our economy, as well as promote industrial leadership in this area. It puts priority on the deployment of renewable hydrogen, especially for hard-to-abate sectors like transport and industry, and sets clear objectives for in terms of electrolyzers installed to produce renewable hydrogen, in particular 6 gigawatts by 2024 and 40 gigawatts by 2030. For this reason, it set a roadmap until 2050 in order to transform the objectives into reality, and this includes an investment agenda, includes regulations, market creation, research and innovation, of course, as well as international collaboration. In this context, it's important to create a hydrogen infrastructure in coastal and fluvial areas as a key connection between production and demand centers. This was acknowledged also in our strategy, and moreover, the maritime transport applications may become an alternative to low-emission fuels for islands, waterways, and short sea shippings already in the short term. Ports and terminals across Europe are embarking on various ways to reduce their emissions, and today we will hear more from several of the speakers. Innovation in this area is extremely important, and we want to discuss with you opportunities for scaling up green hydrogen across the globe and the roles that port can play in this process, but in particular for Europe. The Fit for 55 package, which we have launched recently in July this year, is perhaps one of the most significant and complete package of legislation developed by the Commission to support achieving the Green Deal objectives. We aim through this also to support the implementation of the European hydrogen strategy, developing all the actions which I was referring to in terms of regulations, legislation, and other initiatives. The package has 13 basically legal initiatives, plus the Climate Social Fund, to achieve 55% reductions in greenhouse gas emissions by 2030. Let me mention just very few points of this, which are highly relevant for hydrogen. The revision of the Renewable Directive, including binding sub-targets for the use of renewable hydrogen in transport, 2.6%, and the industrial sector, 50% by 2030. The proposal also extends the certification system to renewable hydrogen and as well as accounting, creating a level playing field among renewable fuels. The proposed alternative fuels infrastructure regulators, where we aim to have 12.9% target for reduction of the greenhouse gas emissions for transport fuels, among others. And where we also, for at least road transport, we have the targets of 150 kilometers for the refueling stations. The FCSGU maritime proposal with emission reduction targets for ships, and this is particularly important for the ports as well. The revision of the emission trading directive to ensure that maritime transport sector contributes to the climate ambitions. The Commission is proposing to extend the scope of the emission trading scheme to cover CO2 emissions from large ships. And all these are complemented by a different initiative on competition, on taxation, on emission trading, all this aiming to support renewable low carbon fuels and hydrogen and their uptake in different applications, including in maritime applications and industrial clusters, which very often are linked to the ports. The market rules to design a competitive market for decarbonized gases and hydrogen are also now under preparation, and this will be the second part of the package, which will be presented by the end of this year. I believe that this new legislative framework will be important to provide a clear sense of direction also to the port authorities investing in green hydrogen, both within the EU but also behind us. We need a global market, and ports are very instrumental into this. Let me recall two initiatives showing our commitments to our ports. One is a Green Deal call on green airports and ports, which included clean hydrogen-related demonstration project with €100 million. And this year, together with the fuel cells and hydrogen joint undertaking, the launch of a study to identify challenges and opportunities to develop hydrogen in EU ports. The joint undertaking is going to launch an initiative to support ports at EU level, and Bart will tell you more about this in a few minutes. Together, we also cooperated, and with the strong support and actually the involvement of the IEA, we have launched a global ports coalition in the context of the Clean Energy Ministerial, on which the Commission is leading the hydrogen initiative. It was this coalition. It was launched in May by our Commissioner for Energy, Cade Simpson, in Chile, and already 50 ports signed for this, I have to tell you. The first meeting to define the working program is taking place actually during these days, during this week. But we felt that we need to do more at European level. We saw a growing need to raise awareness globally, but also among ports and also fluvial ports in relation to industrial clusters in Europe to support energy transition. And ports are not only the backbone of crucial infrastructure scaling up or switching to low carbon hydrogen, ports and surrounding areas may drive demand for hydrogen technology and fuels in the day-to-day operation and liaise and create ecosystems with regional authorities and in the areas where they are placed. So our objective is to put a regulatory framework in place for hydrogen and infrastructure. We also are open to hear what are the challenges and opportunities in this area and how policymakers can support this development. And therefore, I'm very pleased again to moderate this event today and to introduce our speakers. We have, first of all, Bart Wiebuk, who is Executive Director of the Fuels and Hydrogen Joint Undertaking. We have Isabel Rickmos, the Secretary General of the European Sea Ports Organization. We have Hedge Oakland, the CEO of NSCI Maritime Cleantech. We have Bernd Pistol, the Head of Port Estate and Maritime Affairs at the Hamburg Port Authority. I'll give the floor for a 5-minute presentation to each of the panelists, and after that, we will open for discussions. With this, for my part, I'm pleased to give the floor to Bart. Bart, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Tudor, and thanks for the kind introduction. So, good morning, everybody, and I will quickly explain a little bit what we are doing here in the Fuel Cells and Hydrogen Joint Undertaking related to ports and maritime. Next slide, please. So, first of all, the FCSGU is a joint undertaking. We are working together with the private sector, means the industry and the research organization and the European Commission. In order to support projects, we have supported now 287 projects for 1 billion euro. But of course, also the private side has put it 1 billion euro. Next slide, please. It was already hinted by Tudor. He mentioned the Global Ports Hydrogen Coalition that was launched under the SEM. We have, for example, in Europe, one project in a port. This is the H2 Ports project in the port of Valencia, where basically we try to put fuel cells in reach stackers, also in yard tractors, and we have built a mobile hydrogen refueling station in the port. And of course, all the regulations around that is, of course, a challenge, and they are trying to address that as well. The project will end normally by the end of next year, and we supported that with 4 million euro. All these learnings will go, of course, in the Global Ports Hydrogen Coalition, which at the moment, I believe there are around 12 European ports, but as Tudor said, that will grow for sure. And we will try to get also learnings from other parts in the world and try to all share that so that we can accelerate the transition of also the decarbonization of the ports. Soon we will start a European Ports Initiative, which has a very clear aim, is to establish a roadmap for hydrogen in ports. So we have the Global Ports Hydrogen Coalition is to share experience, but then in Europe we would like to bring together all the European ports, as many as possible, and really build this roadmap. We have this LNG roadmap in Europe for ports, but now also we should have a hydrogen roadmap. In that roadmap, of course, we will identify also the barriers that exist, try to see how we can solve them. I mean, we will talk about bunkering, we will talk about what is the best carrier. All these things will be in a part of the roadmap. Next slide, please. In the next slide, also, you can see here what we have done in the field of the maritime. We have started back in 2013 with very, very small fuel cells, I mean 50 kilowatts in yachts. And we have gradually pushed this now towards 3 megawatts. And also, as you can see, we have different carriers. We have, of course, compressed hydrogen, but also we use ammonia and then solid oxide fuel cells or liquid hydrogen. So we test various carriers and also various storage technologies. in order to learn from them and to see what is the best one for each area. And we will see different, let's say, different technologies in different use cases. That's crystal clear. Next slide, please. One other, let's say, initiative is the Hydrogen Valleys. And we've used really the hydrogen valleys as an accelerator for the European hydrogen economy. And you can see in the 3 hydrogen valleys that we have now today, I mean, we have the big hit in Orkney Islands. There they use also hydrogen for powering ferries. But then we have the North Netherlands and Groningen, and also there the hydrogen is used for inland water transport. And then the island of Mallorca in Spain, they will use also hydrogen to power in the port of power ferries or boats in the port of Palma. So you clearly see that in each of this hydrogen valley, there's some little accent towards hydrogen imports. However, we believe that in future we should make also a hydrogen valley really in a big port. We can imagine ports of Amsterdam or Antwerp or something. So a big hydrogen valley in a port. Why? Because also the IEA was very clear. They say ports are ideal hydrogen hubs because there is a lot of industry as well, heavy industry that needs hydrogen to decarbonize. You have the maritime, so a lot of potential there for hydrogen. Next slide, please. So the FCSGU will cease to exist by the end of the year, and from next January we will start with a new partnership, which will be called the Clean Hydrogen Joint Undertaking. We will have a bigger budget, €1 billion, to support research and innovation in various domains. One of the domains that are specifically related to the topic of today is, first of all, the distribution of hydrogen. We will see how we can do large-scale storage also in ports, pipeline transport, so to refurbish the natural gas pipelines to carry hydrogen. Liquid carriers, we can think about ammonia, methanol, and so on, and also just transport by truck. So all this, I mean, the ports again will play a very important role to test all these different distribution methods. Also, we will continue to work on maritime and also ships. We have to demonstrate more ships on inland waterways, but also in deep sea vessels. And then again, we will, as I said, the hydrogen valleys will be there. What is also important to mention is that now there is a specific partnership on maritime, which is called Waterborne, and we will work together with the Waterborne partnership also in synergy to make sure that we complement each other in the research and innovation activities. Next slide, please. And finally, this is just some publicity. We will have our European Hydrogen Week on the 29th of November to the 3rd of December, which will be the launch of the new joint undertaking. And it will actually, the Hydrogen Week will be opened by our president, Ursula von der Leyen. So I would say, if you really want to know what's going on in Europe on hydrogen, on the various domains, please be there. It's a full week of discussions on that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Bart. Thank you very much. If there is any quick direct question to Bart, happy to take it. Of course, we will plan some more questions at the end, but I also know that Bart may not be able to stay till the very end. So if there is any urgent question to him now, please, or specific for related to the presentation, please don't hesitate to write it in the chat box or. I think the issue with the slides was solved. So if not, we'll move to the next presentation as planned and then move to the part of questions. So pleased to invite now Isabel Ripos, the Secretary General of the European Seaport Organization. So please, Isabel, if you can open your microphone and camera, and we move the back.
Good morning. Good morning, Tudor, and good morning, everyone, and thank you for this invitation. It's very important for us, and we can already go to the next slide. Yeah, just to tell you who we are, we represent all the port managing bodies of all the maritime member states, and we have also observer members in some of the neighboring countries. Of course, we are a bit the link between the ports and the European institutions, and we try to see that the legislation, that, you know, our concerns are reflected in the legislation. And so therefore all the legislative framework around hydrogen will be very important for us. So it's very nice to be now in this conference, and we can go to the next slide. Because a bit maybe to understand, and I think all the people here in the conference, but maybe understand, because it's all port people or many port involved people, it's that this port managing body is in the middle of a lot of activities and a lot of interests. So what we see, and we have done a study also in May last year, this year with Deloitte, is that the role of the port is changing. And from being just a hub of transport, of being at the crossroads of supply chains, we see that the ports are increasingly becoming hubs of sustainable energy and being these clusters also of industry and blue economy. So, and this is also all linked to the debate of today. So where we see that ports are really a bit at the center of a lot of things and can therefore play an important role in this whole debate and in this whole ramping up of the hydrogen economy. We can go to the next slide. Yeah, and we can, yeah, this is very obvious. So, and we can go already to the next slide. So what we see is that, in fact, for us, if we talk about Green Deal, like it was mentioned also in the introduction of Tudor, it's for us, for ports, it's on the one side solving the problem in a way. So see that the energy transition of the port managing body itself, but also of all the stakeholders, and you have seen it in the previous slide, that we can make this energy transition happen. So it's in a way solving the problem. But I think if we also talk about being a hub of sustainable energy, then we also talk about the port as being a part of the solution, as being a part of the solution for greening the economy and having the sustainable growth in Europe. And we can go to the next slide. And if we talk about ports being part of the solution, as I said, it's hubs of energy and being now hubs or becoming hubs of sustainable energy, because already traditionally 40% of what goes in and out of European ports are sources of energy. Of course, mainly fossil sources of energy up to now, but this is steadily moving towards cleaner sources. So this is, we see, and luckily so, that also in the sustainable energy, ports can play an equally important role. Then if we look at blue economy and of course, offshore renewable energy and so on is very important in that respect. We see that you need a port to bring this economy or this offshore on land. And then the third big thing that we see is the whole ports as an ideal location for circular economy, because they bring together so many activities, and they can also be in a very interesting interaction with the cities and urban agglomerations, because ports, European ports, are 90% are in or close to urban agglomerations. So we can go to the next slide. So just a bit, and this is to turn ports into sustainable energy hubs. What does it imply? And these are some things that we have, because you can't, what does it mean if you want to become or invest or progress in being an energy hub and a sustainable energy hub? This will mean that you will have to adapt port infrastructure and spatial planning. So you will have to upgrade certain things, and for instance, for the offshore wind, and this brings also to the next point, the next point here on the slide, is that not only the infrastructure in the port, but the supply chains. So all these new energies and certainly also hydrogen will come with their own supply chains, hinterland connectivities. So this might all change. Also the maritime connectivity, whereas you will have that the oil comes or coal comes from certain sources and goes to certain destinations. For these new energies, this will be all maybe different and probably different or new connectivities. What it also means is that as port managing body, you have to engage with new stakeholders, new partnerships, and we have some of these new partnerships and stakeholders here around the table. So this is also maybe a challenge, but many ports are already investing in that and do already have these new links. So, but this will also be a change. And then what is also important is that the skills that the port managing body to become this for a port to become a sustainable energy hub, you will have to invest and attract new skills. I mean, you will have to attract people in the port managing bodies and so on who are very skilled in all the energy problematics. And then finally, it's also a port governance impact there might be, because as you might know or will know, is that ports in Europe have moved to being landlord ports, so that the operations is being given out to private operators. So we see that in all the new energies, we see that some ports are taking a slightly different role, a more important role, co-investors, and even being a co-operator. The next slide. So for hydrogen, very briefly, because we can discuss afterwards, what we see is that the role that ports will be playing will be different for different regions, for different ports. It's important to identify the infrastructure needed in a comprehensive way. What we also plead for is to have the single-use hydrogen infrastructure, so not only dual with gas and so on. Hydrogen import infrastructure will be important. Also this notion of stepping up the local market, local hydrogen market, but with a cross-border impact. To understand if you optimize in one port, it can have a cross-border impact. And then, so the boosting, of course, of renewable energy is very important. Next slide, or final slide, I think. So important elements, and I think today with being in this conference, this already confirms that we are going in the good direction, is that we must have a recognition by governments at each level of this new role of ports. And if we talk about hydrogen and so on, that we start, that the policymakers are also looking at the ports. We also think that it's something developing, becoming a sustainable energy hub and investing in hydrogen. It's not at all just for the big ports, but it will be for every port. In general, what is important to know, or what is difficult, it's that in this whole new energies, including hydrogen, ports are a bit faced with, they need to develop in the long term, but they are hesitating a bit because there are different possibilities, different choices. So they want to make future-proof choices in their investments. And so that is challenging. And what my final note would be that this whole role of ports to invest and to be active in energy is not replacing their traditional role as being at the crossroads of supply chains, but is coming on top of their traditional role. So in fact, their tasks are becoming wider, their responsibilities are becoming wider. And I think this is my last point. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Very, very clear and also very interesting. And we'll get back with the questions also to you. Now, I would like to introduce the next speaker, Helge Økland, the CEO of NCE Maritime Cleantech. So, yeah, if you can connect and we move backstage.
Yes, hello and good morning, everyone. And thank you so much for inviting me to speak at this seminar, which has such an important topic. I represent a Norwegian Center of Expertise, a cluster organization called Maritime Cleantech. And we have over 150 partners representing the entire maritime value chain. And I like to add the new maritime value chain, because in the new maritime industry, we need to include suppliers of renewable energy. For instance, companies like Yara, now having plans to produce green ammonia. And we also need to include grid owners and suppliers of renewable hydropower. And of course, the harbors are also important partners in our cluster, like Ms. Isabel Rickpost presented in the previous presentation. We also have ship owners in a range of different segments, deep sea and also short sea ship owners, passenger ships, offshore supply vessels, and so on. And the Norwegian Maritime Authority and class societies are, of course, important players when developing new technology. Next slide, please. This cluster organization is all about increasing the competitiveness of our partners by developing low and zero emission solutions. And we are doing this by setting up different consortium of companies and research partners and so on to develop low and zero emission vessels. And as you can see here, we have several ongoing projects, and 3 of them are partly funded by FCSGU, and we have European partnerships on board these projects. And here we are also demonstrating different fuels and energy systems in the TRAM project, which is funded by Horizon 2020. We are developing an electric passenger vessel, and Rogaland County Council is the coordinator of this project and will also act as a ship owner. And this vessel will be operating outside Stavanger early next year, and will have fully electrical propulsion and then zero emission. In Norway, there has also been a rapid development of electrical ferries, and I guess you have heard about this before, that it started with Ampere back in 2015, and now we have over 80 ferries, electrical ferry, battery electric ferries operating along the coast. But next year, early next year, the first liquid hydrogen powered ferry will be operating in Rogaland. And this ferry will be in operation for the Norwegian Public Road Administration. And since this project developed, we also needed to look into the supply chain of green hydrogen, green liquid hydrogen, which is the fuel here. And in many seminars and conferences in Norway, one of the most often mentioned phrase is the chicken and egg discussion. And this is very typical here, because here we start with the demander of hydrogen, the ferries or the operators, and then we develop the infrastructure afterwards. So this ferry will have green hydrogen, that is important, and the contract says that that has to be implemented from 2022. And that was one of the reasons that a project came up called Aurora. So if you can take the next slide, please. This project is a partnership with several partners, but the main partners is the hydropower company BKK and Air Liquide and Equinor. And this partnership will establish a production of liquid hydrogen outside Bergen along the Norwegian western coast. And this factory will produce emission-free liquid hydrogen, both blue and green hydrogen. And this will be distributed by the Topeka vessel, which is also a part of the HyShip project, which is also funded by FCSGU. And now the ABUHA project is also a part of the EUSEW program and has established cooperation with several European initiatives setting up an infrastructure for green hydrogen. And I need to emphasize that it is so important for the success of the transition to a green maritime industry that we are able to set up such new supply chains like this, and also for ammonia and other green fuels. And here, of course, the harbors will play an important role as energy hubs along the coast. And the Topeka vessel will distribute the liquid hydrogen along the offshore harbors along the coast from Stavanger and up to Kristiansund, as you can see on this map. This project plans to establish this production, so it will be ready in 2024. So next slide, please. Here you can see how this factory is integrated in the industry hub in Mongstad. We see that if we are going to succeed by setting up new hydrogen production, if we are going to have a commercial sustainable operation, we need to have overall picture of many different industries and their demand and needs and understanding of this. So this Aurora project will support oxygen to fish farm located in Mongstad, and will also have a close collaboration with Mongstad Refinery, and will receive energy from this refinery. The blue hydrogen will be produced from this, and the green hydrogen from both windmills and the grid with hydropower. So setting up this factory will enable this whole industry area to reduce its emissions. And of course, this is an important hub also for offshore vessels going in and out to the North Sea, and will enable them to reduce or eliminate their emissions. Now, next slide, please. This is another project in the cluster, which is it's kind of competitor to the previous project I mentioned, the Aurora project, but it's also complementing this project because this is a smaller modular production site called Hydromark, and the plan is to produce 10 tons of hydrogen per day and support car ferries and have local production on the harbors and support car ferries and high-speed ferries, and in the long run also support other industries like aquaculture and other transport modes. So this is some examples of what happens when we start with the vessels, the demand side. Like I mentioned, a vessel for the Norwegian Public Road Administration, setting up criteria that it needs to be powered by green hydrogen. And then we see that the industry players are acting and now setting up several new initiatives to support the new vessels coming up. But it is the main obstacle here is, of course, the timing, and to have all the demand side in place at the same time, so that we can have an investment on the production side without too much risk. I can see that this is quite demanding, especially for the Aurora project, which needs a specific volume to have a commercial viable business plan. So I think this was my last slide. Yeah, this is just a picture where the Hydromark is planning to establish its production. And you can see that it's the harbor is close to other industry in this area, and of course will enable this industry also to get green hydrogen. Yes, I think that was all for me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Of course, it was all from me for now. I'll be coming back to you with questions as well at the end. Very interesting, and I think many technologies and innovation projects, which of course each could in itself may be subject to a different presentation and discussion. Now move to Björn Pistols, head of the Port Estate and Maritime Affairs in Hamburg. So, and please, Port Authority of Hamburg, Björn, if you can open your camera and presentation. Thank you, and we move on the backstage.
Yeah, thank you, Tudor, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak at this event. My name is Björn Pistol. I'm in the management board of the Hamburg Port Authority. The Port of Hamburg is the third largest port in Europe. And the speciality of the port is that this big industrial area is located within the heart of the 2 million people city of Hamburg. And therefore, we have a clear strategic target. We want to achieve the zero emission port within the next 20 years. And of course, we see hydrogen as a big opportunity to achieve this goal of becoming, yes, the first European zero emission port. So Hege has just mentioned before that there's always this chicken and egg question. And when we looked at hydrogen, we decided that we want not to focus on this question, chicken or egg, but that we want to build up the entire chicken farm. So we said, let's try to build up a really new ecosystem. Let's try to establish a new value system in the port of Hamburg. And this process of transformation is right now ongoing, and we as Port Authority are trying to foster it. We facilitate it, we drive it, and try to bring all actors to a table and try to build up this new value chain from the scratch. And when you look at the port hydrogen ecosystem, then of course everything starts with import. The port is always an import site, and we know that we will not be able to produce enough hydrogen on site, so therefore we will depend on the import. And if we go to the next slide, we are right now in discussions with our fuel and petrol storage companies how to transform them and to enable them to store hydrogen in the future. Right now we don't know really how hydrogen will be imported or transported. It's very unlikely that it's going to be transported as pure hydrogen. It's more likely that it will be bound with the nitrogen or carbon atoms, so as ammonia or as methanol, and then cracked off in the port. And we are currently right now building up the necessary superstructure to handle this ammonia or methanol in order to be able to become a place of import. When we go to the next slide, then import will not be the only supply function. We will also try to produce hydrogen in the port of Hamburg. As you might know, Hamburg is maybe not the most sunniest and the windiest place in Europe, so therefore we will more focus on using offshore wind power energy to run electrolyzers. And we have right now two projects where we want to build up electrolyzers. One is the transformation of a former coal power plant, and the other one is a smaller one. And this, I'm looking forward that within the next couple of years, we will really push the red button and then have it up and running, the electrolyzing of hydrogen. When we go to next slide, then of course, we have now import from water side, we have production, but we will also have so to say, in order to fulfill our role as this energy storage hub and this energy hub, we will also have hydrogen transported via pipelines. So therefore, we are currently repurposing our existing pipeline system in the port, and we're also planning to build up new pipelines in order to make hydrogen accessible everywhere where it's needed. So this is more or less the supply side. And when we then go to the utilization side on the next slide, then of course we are currently building up distribution facilities in the port. We have already three meanwhile gas stations where you can tank hydrogen. And as Hamburg is not only a port as mentioned before, but also a big industrial hub with a lot of transport processes, many trucks going in and out. Of course, we also need a distribution structure. We need many gas stations, and actually all major gas station companies are currently in a dialogue with us in order to find locations where to build up the gas stations of the future. Amongst this mainly land transport, then of course we also have a fuel demand in water side and one logistic structures on the next slide. So we are currently reshaping the fleet of Hamburg, which we are also managing. These are authority vessels, small ferry boats, and everything that is small will be sooner or later equipped with hydrogen, we are quite sure. We also operate the port railway in the port of Hamburg, and we are currently building a hydrogen locomotive, which will be up and running within the next 3 or 4 years. This is currently the fuel demand we see. Hamburg has never been a big bunker port, so therefore we do not see that big seagoing vessels will bunker hydrogen in Hamburg. This will be maybe more operated by our colleagues in Rotterdam, who are the classical bunker port, and what will be bunkered is something we don't know yet. If I would have to bet €5, I would say methanol, but it could be also other stuff. So last not least, of course, as we are also an industrial area, we see on the next slide that we have a big industry demand. We have recently run a study where we wanted to find out what is the demand of hydrogen in our industry in the year 2030. And we found out that we will need 65,000 tons of hydrogen in the year 2030 for industrial production. So we want to produce steel with hydrogen, so zero emission production of steel. We want to produce copper in zero emission, and we also have other processes, industrial processes, where we will substitute fossil stuff with hydrogen. And this huge demand of 65,000 tons is really a challenge for us. But all our big players in the port who are, as said, producing steel or copper or other stuff are really willing to transform their value chain and their production processes in order to switch to hydrogen. And I think this will lead to the situation that the port will really become a known ecosystem, a hydrogen ecosystem. And I think we will see the practical results within the next 3 or 5 or 6 years. So that's from my side, and thanks for your attention.
Thank you very much. Very, very interesting. Now, I think we'd like to move back to all of you, to the entire panel, and to open also the floor for the entire audience for questions. Take advantage. I understand Bart can be with us only until 10 o'clock, so maybe to start first with him. So any questions for, I see Bart, you have started already to address some questions if you can first start with this, say what you said, and there is another question is a chat box. And then meanwhile, maybe there are more specific questions for you. Bart, please.
Yeah, no, one of the question was where we can find all the, let's say, the details on the projects and also the financials. And as I mentioned on our website, basically all the projects are there. So I would advise to write down the project name and then just go to our website, you find all the things there. And then also each project has their own website, so that you can find more details there and contact. If you want to know about the financing, you just contact the coordinator. And of course, if you cannot contact them, feel free to drop me an email. We will bring you in contact them. So that's not a problem.
It was also a question if you think hydrogen will be commercially available for industrial use in heat production. Do you want to say something?
Yes, I believe it will come. I mean, I think at a very big scale, and we see it already happening here and there in other parts of the world. But I think it will still take a bit of more time. I think really beyond 2030, probably we will see maybe hydrogen more for heat. Depends also where you look at it. I mean, hydrogen, for example, in steel, which in a way is also heat, if you want to say so. I mean, it will be there already today. We see it already in Sweden. But if you mean heating for heating big complexes and so on, that will be a bit later, I believe. So it depends what you mean with heat, of course.
Any other questions from I see we have quite a lot of people with us today. Any questions specifically for Bart, which someone wants to raise? If not, I would like to ask you, Bart, because I see really that we had very interesting presentations here and innovative solutions, and we see, and the FCSGU was really at the front run of development of technology in Europe, and we supported this very much from the Commission and really pushed. And now we see there are more and more innovation actors and projects moving on. And also in relation to ports and in relation to the next clean hydrogen partnership, where do you see the biggest contribution and how FCSGU or the next clean hydrogen partnership can actually contribute and have the biggest value added on new technologies, on new solutions which to trigger decarbonization, to trigger the role of hydrogen in decarbonization in ports and subsequently in industrial clusters also.
Thanks. Okay. Well, thanks for the question, Tudor. Of course, ports and is basically an ecosystem on itself, and basically you have everything there in the ports, from industry to transport and various things. So the FCSGU today have contributed in many areas, but maybe a few very typical things and which are very important. I believe also we worked on the certification to make sure that hydrogen is certified, and especially for ports which do a lot of import and export, it's important that they know or that we are able to certify the hydrogen, whether it's renewable hydrogen, whether it's low carbon hydrogen, etc. So we have worked on that since 2014, and I believe that is a very important contribution for the ports. The second one is in the maritime. We have a couple of projects as well today on regulations and standards for hydrogen on ships. And they are working with the IMO. We give feedback to the IMO what kind of safety requirements are there. So this also we do already today. Now, towards the future, clearly we have to scale up. You saw that one of the biggest projects that we got was a 3 megawatt fuel cell in a ship. Well, to be very honest, for maybe inland waterway, that's fine. But when we go to deep sea vessels, it doesn't work. I mean, you need to go to 10 megawatt, 20 megawatt, even for cruise ships and so on. So we need to scale up to have bigger fuel cells. We have to standardize them, we have standardized modules. And for example, 1 megawatt module, I just say something. And also we need to reduce further the cost, and they have to, also we have to work on more efficiency, because if we can say, I mean, if we are more efficient, the fuel cell, of course, we have to carry less fuel on the ship. So that's also a big advantage. So that's what we will do. Also, we will look into different fuels. It was already mentioned also by the Port of Hamburg. I mean, methanol, ammonia, they will be also, potential carriers for hydrogen for deep sea vessels. So Also ammonia fuel cells, for example, we have to look into that as well, and also storage, because if we have if we need to store liquid hydrogen or even ammonia, we need to prepare also the storage space for on the vessels, but also the bunkering on shore. So these are a lot of storage is a lot of a big topic for us as well to work on that, and of course make more demonstrations to support. Today we have only a few demonstrations. I mean, you heard Norway. We have a couple of. I mean, we have supported 3 ships there, but that's always one single ship, and it's just like a prototype. So what we need to start building is a kind of fleets of ships. I mean, I can say, let's say about 20, 25, and try to put in the bunkering and show that it works. Because when I talk to a lot of ports and shipbuilders, they're always a bit worried about the supply of hydrogen, because when they arrive there, they need to have the hydrogen. Will it be available at that time? So to check all this, let's say, this logistics and to see the TCU at the end, if it works fine, this we need to demonstrate. It has not been done so far. It's mainly one single ship always. So I believe this is our big challenge for the next joint undertaking. A lot of challenges, clearly.
Okay, thank you, Bart. There's still a lot of challenges ahead. There are some other questions coming in. If you want to have a look, if you think you would like to add something, although not fully focused on ports, I have to recall also the scope of this meeting. So. Or if someone else wants to step in on particular the questions we have received so far.
I'd just like to add, Bart. So I agree with everything you said, Bart. So I just want to point out that the, let's say, even overall strategy in the Port of Hamburg is the electrification. And hydrogen is a tool to electrify the port. However, hydrogen is always the second best option. The best option is to use electricity directly, to directly use it for production, for moving, for whatsoever. Only if we can't use the electricity coming out of the grid directly, we use H2 as a tool to store energy and to bring it somewhere and can use it decentrally. So this is maybe also important because we have also some people we discuss with who are focused on hydrogen, but actually they only need electricity, and it would be much more efficient to use it directly instead of converting that electricity to hydrogen and then reconverting it. So we should always think not only hydrogen as such, but also the electrification and what is the most energy efficient use of electrification. And again, hydrogen is a must-have tool, but for us always the second best tool. But there is still enough space to use it. I just wanted to add this.
Thank you very much, Björn, because this is also very much in line with our energy system integration strategy. And indeed, we have to make through this the best use of the resources of the energy carriers where they fit best. And in a certain hierarchy, I saw a question around this. And of course, we identified also to the hydrogen strategy also where this would make the biggest difference. And we see that in certain areas where it's difficult to decarbonize, otherwise, in particular in fertilizers, in ammonia production, of course, but also in steel industry, in cement, and heavy-duty transport, maritime applications, and aviation in particular through synthetic fuel. So these are definitely areas where hydrogen will play a key role. And even in some of these areas may not be the second best option, maybe even the best option. So depending on exactly on this end use. But in general, and this particular in relation to renewable energy, also try first to make best use of the renewable electricity we have directly, or if it is for heating through heat pumps, for example, and then see the other applications. Bart, you still want to add yourself something on this before you leave?
Yeah, I mean, I agree also what Björn said, but basically we have to look what is the best technology for the best use case. I mean, and as you said, it can be hydrogen, can be electricity. Of course, if you look from an efficiency viewpoint, of course, electricity is always best, but I always say we should not only look to energy efficiency, we have to look to climate efficiency, because how can we reach the climate goals as fast as possible with the least resources as possible? And that should be the final goal. And one could be, and energy efficiency is definitely one very important pillar in that, but it's not the only thing. There are also other things. I mean, at the end, who pay the cost is also very important, and so on. So I think it's always a bit balanced. We have to look at what is the best.
Yeah, thank you, Bart. And you want to add any last word about what you plan now to do with the Clean Hydrogen Partnership in the short term on this?
Sorry?
What would be your top priority if it would be for the next year?
Well, for me, the priority is definitely now first the study, because in the study we will have a roadmap, and in the roadmap we will identify what are the things that are the most urgent, and then we will fund, of course, those things that are identified. But I believe also that we have to start building an ecosystem, kind of hydrogen valley in a port, because I really would like to see how this ecosystem can work and all the barriers that will be identified at that time. Because at the moment, even when the port of Valencia is just a few reach stackers, a first yard tractor, is not really integrated. We build it there, yes, and we will get learnings, but it's not an integrated ecosystem. So we really need to start building an integrated ecosystem inside a port. I think that's urgent.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Bart. And
I have to leave now. Sorry for that. Thank you very much, Tudor.
And yeah, thank you for being with us. Now, I would like to move ahead with the question, and I see here an interesting question, maybe for all of the panelists, from Laura Lonza. So thank you for a very interesting presentation. Hydrogen infrastructure need to be planned, considering varied needs, uses of hydrogen, and the existing gas pipelines can be repurposed, but as the transition is not necessarily happening at the same pace. How do you see the transition coexistence phase, and what would you flag as main showstoppers in the energy conversion? So would you like Isabella to start first? You have many experiences with many ports. How do you see that? And then maybe I will move, yeah, because this relates also much to innovation. I'll move to Hector. So Isabella, please.
Yes, thank you, Tudor, and thank you for giving the how would I say, pointing out that I have a lot of experience, but I also have to be honest that the whole energy part of a port is also like a new topic, a rather new topic for us as European Port Organization. So we are making our first steps into these whole energy areas in the port. But what we see is that ports are the big ports, of course, are very much, and then we see Hamburg here, Valencia, we spoke about, Rotterdam, and so on. But what we see is that for this whole hydrogen development, the small ports can play an important role as well, and that all ports play a different role. And I think boosting this hydrogen economy, it's a network thing. And you cannot do it one port alone. So I think you need the import, export, production. So you will have to link different players and also different ports. And each port will play a different role in that. What is maybe a bit the challenge is that space maybe. Because you will have to reorganize also in the ports, and some ports in Europe are really a bit squeezed, let's say, because they don't have so much extra space. So this will be probably one of the issues to address. And therefore, I also mentioned that we need this recognition of this positive role of a port in greening through hydrogen and so on, and what you can do for let's say, the greening of the society and the economy. Because expanding the space or using extra space for the port is always a big issue. And the same goes with building additional pipelines and so on. You will have to get this understanding that this is for the good cause and to green not only the port and all the stakeholders in the port, but also beyond the port. So I think this is probably an important thing to convey in this debate. I don't hear you, Tudor.
Thank you very much. Maybe I'll take advantage to ask you an extra question here before moving on. Do you see here differences between the small and big ports? How do you...
No, because I mean, you've seen in the examples that Bart was giving, La Palma, Orkney Islands. I heard, for instance, the port of Ashburg a few days ago, they announced that they will do these big investments in electrolyzers to convert offshore wind to hydrogen, so wind to hydrogen plant. The same goes with the port of Vigo, where the port of Vigo, which is, I mean, an interesting and important port, but from a logistic point of view, this is a small port. And this port will also set the example, the model for other Spanish ports. So it's quite interesting. And what I find interesting is because if you look at the big ports in Europe, they are all at the center of supply chains. They all have big markets around them, big industries around them, big urban agglomerations and so on. But in the whole debate of sustainable energies, you see that a port that is not at the center of Europe, that is not surrounded by big urban agglomeration, big consumption markets, big industries, can play a vital role. For instance, in bringing on land this offshore wind, or playing a role because maybe they have the space for solar and so on. So this will be the interesting thing. So I wouldn't make the you know, separation so much between. It will be difficult for small ones and easier for big ones. I think the big ones will have their own challenges, but also, of course, the added value for use. But the small ones might have some assets like space or like you know, that they can really go in a kind of niche. And so that I think there is a different role for everyone. And what I could say is, or share with you, is that we in ESPO, we will commission now a study on the impact of developing a role in sustainable energy. What does that mean for the infrastructure in the port and the hinterland connectivities and so on, and maritime connectivities? So how do you have to adapt your port? What does it mean? Like pipelines, it has been mentioned, and so on. So we will try to put that, and this is to help on the one hand as well in policy making, what is needed, storage was mentioned and so on, but also to have all the ports a bit online. I mean, to see, because some of the ports are very much active on energy and sustainable energy, and some are not, and some maybe some of the small ones things like, yeah, but we are too small to do that. So we also want to help them a bit by saying, what does it mean and what could be your role, and maybe also because we should not oversell the role of the ports. We must be realistic. For some ports, this will be impossible, so they won't be able to play that role.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Isabel. Would like now to move maybe back in a way with the same question to Hege, but mainly to look at, because she mentioned many innovation projects, and for example, also the role of ammonia, and how do you see the ships on ammonia? How do you plan to move into this area? Hege, can I move towards you?
Yes. You want me to comment on the innovation project?
Yes, please. And also, you can also react to the questions posed and to the previous ones. But also, I think it's very important if you tell us also about some of your innovation projects as well. And,
yeah.
Ammonia, energy carriers like ammonia. Yeah.
Yes. The project which also Bart Biebuck mentioned, the Ship FC project. This will be the first project demonstrating a full scale energy system on board an operating offshore vessel. So the plan is to scale up the high temperature fuel cells from 780 kilowatt to 3 megawatt. So it's quite a big jump. This project has been made possible through funding from FCSGU, but I also like to say that that was not sufficient. We also needed funding from the operator Equinor here, because when we are demonstrating new fuels on board vessel, one of the main barrier in the demonstration period is that the fuel cost is so much higher than the conventional fossil fuels which they use today. And the support we get doesn't cover these extra costs. So we are quite dependent on, especially now in a period where the new fuel supply is not scaled up and the cost is so high. We expect that that will, of course, be reduced in the next coming years when it will have higher volume. But today, we also see that projects are being cancelled just because that we don't have funding from the extra cost. So that is, of course, important. But we also see that, again, the harbors play a vital role in these projects, especially when it comes to passenger vessels, because there are so many safety barriers also in these harbors. And that can also be a showstopper for the projects, because they don't have the space, as Isabel mentioned, in these harbors. And there are also a lot of people there, and cars and so on, being set up in queues waiting to come on board. And then it's not compliant with having a hydrogen fueling station or bunkering system there. So I don't know if I'm covered what you are asking for, Mr. Tudor, but that is something which we see as one of the barriers. But of course, there are many success factors also when we were looking into these projects, and we have gained a lot of experience of what is important when we work on this project. And having representatives from the entire value chain is, of course, important to setting up a consortium. So having suppliers of fuels, having the operator, the end user on board the consortium is an important success factor, in addition, of course, to the technology providers and so on. But in the end, it's the ship owner and the operator who makes the decisions, and they need to be on board the project. So, yeah.
Thank you very much. I'd like now to move a little bit back to Pistol and to ask him a little bit more about the plans in the port of Hamburg. We have seen now, we have also in the questions here some questions specifically about how you see for Hamburg port the link to renewable electricity and to offshore, eventually wind, but also how you see the role of methanol. So there are important questions, and I would maybe you can put this in a general framework of what are the plans and how do you see integrating all these solutions in the port of Hamburg for the coming years. Pistol.
Maybe I first answer the two questions here. First was regarding the local. So we are right now working on building a shunting loco for our ports rail, and the shunting loco shall be up and running in 2025. And yeah, I would be happy to share more details via email, because I don't have now the presentation at hand, but I've sent my email address to Chiara. The second question was if we have existing facilities to get the wind energy in here. So I've said that we are currently planning to transform a former coal power plant to a electrolyzer, and we've chosen this site because at this site there is this 380 kV plug-in where we can directly bring offshore wind electricity to Hamburg and then use it for generating hydrogen. However, this is the only 380 kV plug we have in Hamburg. We don't have any more. So, and this shows where actually currently we have the main challenges. It's in transporting or getting the energy to Hamburg, to the inland. That's the first challenge. And the second challenge is to have overall enough energy, because we know that if we want to meet the demand for hydrogen import, if we would produce all hydrogen in Hamburg, and if the electrolyzer would run 24 hours, 365 days a year, then we would need one offshore wind park who's only operating to produce energy for the H2 demand in the port of Hamburg. One offshore wind park doesn't sound much, but Hamburg is not the only industrial areas. I mean, if you see how many industrial areas have, then we actually do not have enough offshore wind parks to meet all the demands we will be having in Europe. And so this is, I think right now it's an unsolved question, an unanswered question. How do we get enough energy in here? And therefore, I'm a bit skeptical if we will really see hydrogen as a fuel for seagoing vessels. If we will really see it, because the question, is there enough energy to produce the H2 fuel for vessels, and can they afford it? Because you know the price for a kilo of H2 is not comparable to current. So the question is, will we really see hydrogen? So if we see hydrogen-based fuel, then I think it will be more methanol than ammonia. I said that we want to become a zero-emission port. So zero emissions, not only ultrafine dust and CO2 and noise, but also smell. So the question is, when you handle ammonia, will you be able to cope with the smell problem? I don't know. And ammonia is also highly explosive. So I think methanol has better chances right now. But maybe we will see rather e-fuels. So where you basically take carbon out of the atmosphere and transform it to synthetic diesel or synthetic petrol. And I think the chances for e-fuels are a bit higher than for hydrogen when it comes to firing seagoing vessels.
Very, very interesting, of course. Thank you. And yeah, here we can all have a number of views and opinions. I find this, what to say now, particularly personally interesting and yeah, close to what we can foresee now based on the technology that we have now. We also see a dynamics of technologies, which sometimes, yeah, we'll see how it evolves, but we have to keep this dynamics. We try also to keep the dynamics in terms of the policy and regulatory framework in order to encourage technology developments and not to be a barrier to their deployment, on the contrary. Now, but yeah, we'll have to move on all these things. Now I see it was also a question here just about the Portuguese ports. I would like to mention here that in launching this initiative for ports with fuel cells and joint undertaking, we also made use of what we have at the Commission DGNR. It's a network for policymakers on hydrogen, HyNet, with energy ministries, and through them we asked to tell us which would be the ports they have identified to be interested to participate in this network at European level. And so far, from the information we got, it was port in Portugal, because this was a question of the port of Sines, Aveiro, Açores, and the administration of the port of the Douro. So these were the ports which from Portugal so far expressed interest, but we'll see how things evolve. This was a specific question. Now, coming back to maybe the more general issues. And I see here we had some extra questions, and maybe to return to Hege for this part of innovation about how do you see this circular flows possible in the green ports, electricity, hydrogen, oxygen, CO2, heat, water. Has this been modeled? Do you know? Do you have a general model? Is something applied for different ports? Can you comment a little bit on that?
No, not to my knowledge. It has been made a full-scale demonstration project. It has been set up smaller simulations or design projects, but not to my knowledge. But maybe somewhere in Europe, but I haven't heard about it. But here again, I think it's the business model maybe which is stopping it at the moment, at least in Norway.
Okay.
It's the electricity is so cheap today.
Maybe I can add to that I think Norway has the luxury to be really able to produce green hydrogen. And when we talk in Hamburg about hydrogen, we only talk about green hydrogen. So we do not talk about gray or blue or whatsoever is known there. So I think hydrogen will only have a future if it's produced green. And as a German, I have to add, if it is produced without nuclear power plant energy. So and therefore I think Norway has really a competitive edge with all the wind and water and energy that is produced there.
Yeah, if I can comment on that, yes, we are fortunate. We have a lot of energy in Norway, and we are not using it, or we don't have much wind farms yet in Norway. We're getting some onshore, but they are quite debated. But when I heard what you said about ammonia in shipping and hydrogen in shipping, and that is also a discussion which is often coming up. And I think we also need to see new ways of energy production offshore and maybe we see that shipping companies are also more integrated in the energy production, like we see, for instance, with Maersk and methanol, so that they can take hand or make sure that they have sufficient supply of fuel. But of course, this is something which will be very much in competition with other industries in the future. So I tend to agree with you.
Okay, thank you very much. Now let me go back for a second to Isabella and ask her about how you see now, because of course the large ports are front runners in this, but how do you see that they are preparing really for taking on board more hydrogen? Is this what are the main drivers? You mentioned at a certain moment in your presentation also the importance of the ports for energy trade and how much this represents. How do you see the big ports preparing for this?
Yes, thank you. I think with Hamburg we see here a good example of everything what is being done and what can be done. Because that is probably the big issue, and as Hamburg was saying, I mean, to meet this demand, it will not be so obvious. So this is because you need a business case, you need you have to look at the cost, compare costs, and this will be quite challenging. I mean, so this, but there, I think that what is the driver for big ports? It's often that you know sometimes we tend to say that and it's maybe a wrong way of saying it, but the big polluters are the first ones who are investing in decarbonization. So I mean these big ports who are not, the port managing body is not a polluter, but it's a very small polluter if you look at the whole port area. But in a port there is a lot of activity coming together, and so a lot of pollution coming together, or creation of pollution. And so this is of course a how would I say, a stick to also then to do your best to get this license to operate. So you're pushed to go for this green solution and to be a front runner. But as I also said, I think what is very important is that you have the supply chains around it, because you won't be able to produce all the hydrogen in some of the ports and so on. You will have to import, some have to export. You have to link, like a port of Rotterdam will probably link with Groningen in the north of Holland, where you have a lot of renewables. So this will have to be in place to have this going, and then space. I mean, I think because Hamburg showed, for instance, with the coal plant that would then be reconverted, but where are the possibilities there to deploy this storage, to deploy all the infrastructure that is needed? So, but I see that the big ports have it really very high on their agenda, this whole hydrogen thing. But there are still a lot of question marks, and also I think as legislation will be important, the certification, as was mentioned. So I think these all are things we are a bit in a critical period. I mean, I think there is a lot of coalition of the willing, but now it has to get a step further, and probably also funding will come very much into this to make this push and to promote, to make it more a business case.
Indeed, thank you. Would you like Pistol to comment, and also to comment maybe how you see the development of the hydrogen infrastructure in parallel, repurposing existing infrastructure? Hydrogen will not be from the beginning as an important energy source or carrier as traditional fossil fuels. So how do you see these infrastructures replacing each other, developing in parallel? Could you also follow up on the Isabel intervention?
I mean, what I see is that we also have an IPCEI project. These are these important project of common European interest, where we have exactly set up the entire value chain. What I see is that with this hydrogen, it's a bit the general trend we see in society, this shared economy and collaboration, and this is something we also see in hydrogen, as also Hege mentioned, that OEMs, but also users of hydrogen, they more think in value chains, and they more think in the resilience and reliability of having access to hydrogen and using it. And we don't see anymore that one tank storage company is building up a tank in order to have the hydrogen stored, but that they really see themselves as one piece in a chain. And that's really the difference. And therefore, I mean, Isabel, maybe you can prove that the port authorities in this regards have also a bit a new role as really a facilitator and moderator of these new shared value chains that are built up. And that's really an interesting trend which we see here. And it's also interesting that the people are willing to cooperate, and that they are not trying to hide secrets and hide their very, very unique knowledge, but they're really willing to share it, because they know only together they can build up this new ecosystem.
Yeah, indeed. Thank you. And on this positive note, I think of collaboration and involving all the stakeholders, I'd like to go back maybe to Hege to ask you, how do you see here the role of innovation, and what you see, what are the success factors for these kind of projects to succeed?
Yeah, as Björn mentioned, I think that we need to have the whole value chain on board, and trust between the partners is of course an important success factor. And then to establish that trust, everyone needs to see what this can create of value for the single partners, that they can see that they have a specific role in the project. We have several competitors in the cluster, both among the ship owners and but also among the technology providers. And there are always some things that they can collaborate on. For instance, the new kind of competence which is needed, how to set up educational programs and so on. And that is something the industry need to collaborate on. But when it comes to specific innovation projects, we don't have competitors on board in the same consortium. Then we need to have one specific integrator and one specific battery provider or hydrogen provider and so on. But I also like to add that we see that the fuel supplier, the harbors as well, is also more and more a critical partner in these innovation projects, because we need to have access to both the infrastructure and also the fuels. And that's why I think that Björn and also Isabel in the near future will see more and more consortium or innovation projects approaching them to be part of the projects. And since shipping by nature is global business and crossing borders, we need to have collaboration across regions and nations, of course. I think that FCSGU and also the new Horizon Europe program has an important role in this to bring partners together, like we have experienced through our 4 ongoing EU projects. We have established so many new valuable contacts in Europe, and we are using the same network in new projects and getting more and more spin-off projects. So yeah, even if Norway is outside EU, we are still a part of the EU program. So yeah, I think you'll see more and more of this collaboration in the future, and more cluster collaboration as well.
Of course. Now, thank you very much. And indeed, you all mentioned the importance of collaboration, the importance also having integrated partners and projects, yeah, looking at the whole value chain and the various solutions and energy carriers, including hydrogen or fuels derived from hydrogen, how to best make them working together. On this, I would say, on this positive tone, I would like to thank you all. I would like to thank the joint undertaking. I invite participants to look also at the website of the joint undertaking and to follow the activities we are going to develop together on the European Networks Board. You may also look at the IA for the Global Ports Coalition. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to address us, to address the joint undertaking, to whom I thank again for organizing this very timely event. And with this, I wish you also a good Sustainable Energy Week for all the events you are going to follow in this context. And let me thank again to all the panelists and for their insights and presentations, and have a very good rest of the day. Thank you very much to all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you all. Bye.